navy long coat. And he approaches you and he says, "Good afternoon. I assume that you're forwarders to the city?"
The area around you right now is dimly lit by lumen globes, and you can see the lumen globes reflecting in the smooth stone surface on the bridge you're standing on. There are several people walking around you, dressed in fine clothing, in sort of an upper class area of the city. The sun is about to set. It's about to become dark.
Quentin kind of spins on his heel at the voice coming near him and just squints at him like you'd imagine Clint Eastwood would in his movies. And he kind of pats down his jacket and kind of pulls it tighter at the fact that the gentleman knows immediately that he's not here. And he's like, "Well, what exactly gave us away? Was it my stunning good looks?" He laughs as he says it, obviously joking.
The man kind of laughs and he says, "But of course it was your stunning good looks. That and the fact that you don't look like you're, farmers or scavengers or nobles, which would usually be the people that frequent this area. May I ask, did you come across an overland journey and in a convoy?"
No, we were on a small safari, I guess.
We're just visitors from a far-off land trying to find far-off things.
There were some animals, so that's safari.
Will you shut up? He says and turns to Ross over his shoulder. Let the men talk, yeah? If you ain't got
Ross is
anything
just-
useful to say.
Ross is just, starting to crumble in her driver's seat. Sorry.
Anyway, like I said, do you happen to be the sort of gentleman that would have interesting things for people that ain't from here to hear?
Quite, actually. Why don't we retire to a private booth somewhere and we can discuss things further.
Sounds like my type of thing. Come on! Whatever, I don't know, group,
He doesn't-
if we want to call ourselves that.
Yeah, nice. You notice that the man does not introduce himself, by the way.
You notice that Quentin does not introduce himself either.
Nice. And again, what kind of clothes are you wearing in Mogadishu?
So he is wearing a navy long coat with a series of medals over his left breast, and he has a fairly finely wrought mesh cloak that surrounds his body, and then he has a crimson scarf that is tied tightly about his neck and tucked into his clothing.
Awesome. You get an inspiration point, and everyone gets it, by the way, from the awesome role playing so far. And you see several of the upper class diplomats and bureaucrats in this part of the city. As soon as they spot Mogadishu's character, they either bow or just avert their gaze as soon as they see you walking. And you get a feeling that people assume that you're on some important business. You walk back to where do you want to go first of all?
He's leading us somewhere, isn't he, to a booth?
Yeah,
So
we're
I
gonna
guess-
we're gonna go to Panoramic 34 first to make sure we understand what everybody is here.
Awesome. So, as you're sort of walking across these huge bridges, on the left-hand side you can see this huge plaza. You see several of what you assume to be Sarawak's soldiers, sort of palace guards, doing a little patrol in formation around the plaza. They are dressed in sleek black uniforms, reflecting the evening sun, and it's almost blinding you as they walk in formation. They don't look to be the type of people you want to mess with. On the right hand side you see several large mansions and expensive sort of almost hotels. They're still in the same style as these stone spires, but some of them have glass surfaces. And connecting to the huge stone bridge surrounding the Plaza Garden, you see these Art Deco sort of skyscrapers with polished, reflective plastcrete panels in different shapes. It's an attempt at maybe some exotic architecture, but it's run down and rusted. But you assume that at some point it probably looked very, very nice. The entrance to Panoramic is a catwalk leading to massive plastcrete doors with several armed guards standing outside. They don't look like the official guards of the city, and they're guarding limousines covered in angels, skulls, family crests, banners, pipes, all kinds of other excesses. Think of like a cyberpunk limo with just pimped up vehicles.
Nice rights.
Yeah, and they look menacing at you as you approach the doors. There's a guard standing outside the door.
Quentin kind of turns over to the kind of guide and raises an eyebrow. Well, I guess this is your part, huh? After all, we're just folk that don't look like we belong.
Exactly. Can I name the door guys?
Yeah, feel free.
Perfect. So the man walking in front, because he does walk in front, he leads the group, and as I said, he bears no obvious weaponry, and he greets the two doormen. And he says, "Tetricus, the group that I told you about is here. We require a private booth, and please inform Solidus that we will be indisposed for a couple hours. Please make sure that no one disturbs us."
This
And
huge,
with
like hulk of a tower of a human with cyborg sticking out of his skull. His jaw is fastened to his collar, which is again this huge cybernetic piece. It doesn't look like the sharpest tool, and takes a step forward.
Alright, sir. I'll let him know.
thank you, Tetricus.
Anything else
And
you
it-
require, sir?
He scratches his
We will require refreshments.
Refreshment, sir. Right away.
Thank you. Amasec, please.
Sir. Only the best for you, sir.
steps up to the door, opens it, and it makes a creaking sound. And you step inside, I guess, unless you want to go somewhere else.
What sort of name is Theticus? Is all Quentin can grumble under his voice. He shakes his head.
Ooh,
The-
sick burn. Yeah. So you just...
Tetricus.
Oh yeah, go.
No, so the man turns back and replies, Tetricus. And actually, he's a very good human being. He keeps the riffraff out.
Oh, well, as long as he's a good human being, you know, that's all that matters.
That's
Nothing
more
about
than I
him
can
having-
say. That's more than I can say for the people outside of this city.
Well, maybe it's because the folk outside of the city are never allowed in, that they don't get to be called Tetricus, and they don't get to be good human beings, huh? And with that, Quentin kind of just brushes past as he kind of walks into the room, squinting about. Feels distinctly uncomfortable at just the sight of all this poshness and richness and niceness.
And I assume you make it very obvious to the people around you that you don't really respect their norms and ways.
Nope. He's scruffing the floorboards as he walks past them. He's kind of staring around.
Nice. You notice a guy with sort of a blue mohawk is dressed in metallic armor. He looks over to you and he sort of smiles to himself as your eyes meet his, and you can tell that he would be interested in talking to you. He seems to be, his body language indicates it. However, you're about to step into the bar itself, and
Yes.
you sort of, as soon as you step inside, You're just met with this wall of smoke. And it's hard to breathe for a moment. And this is a very dark bar with unusually exotic clientele. They immediately start inspecting you as you step inside. One of the guards, who's supposed to pat you down, just notices you step in, takes a couple of steps back, and just stands by the door. He points to a table in the corner of the room. You can see armed city guards lean up against the walls. And Mogadishu, you know that they're stationed there because they have to be. But they're not really looking at the various crimes being committed in the bar. They don't even seem to mind the countless weapons and drugs openly displayed on the tables in front of them.
As people are kind of staring at him, Quentin kind of just goes up to one of them. She's like, "What? Have you never seen a handsome-looking man before?" Before he kind of brushes through, and he heads straight for the bar, just needing some amasec before he even deals with the rest of this. So he orders himself a round.
Yeah, you get a nice tray of amasec, and you can do an influence test to see
The quality.
yeah, exactly.
Oh god, this is gonna go bad.
You'll get some of this, how it was called?
I'll use... This is such a bad
This
use
is so
of
important for you when you use your inspiration point.
Oh fuck, no.
No, unfortunately, the amasec you get is kind of muddy, dirty looking amasec.
Brilliant. Yeah, Quentin kind of, as the group kind of sits down at a booth, Quentin kind of just throws the amasec on the table and he goes, "I swear to God, you can't even get good alcohol in these places. What's next?"
Well, actually, you can, but understand that this is a place of politics, and walking in like a charging grox is probably not the best way.
"You lost me at the word politics," he says, kind of leaning in the booth, kicking his boots up onto the table, not caring. As he's kind of sticking his finger up his nose, and he kind of goes, "Well, anyway, you got us in this booth, so tell us what you want to discuss."
So I'm assuming that, and this is to the GM, sorry. I'm assuming that there is some kind of code word or hand sign that he would have as a cover agent to reveal other members of the Inquisition, correct?
You should have a rosette, no?
You would probably have an inquisitorial rosette.
Didn't know if I would be issued one of those, but so he, the man in front of you, but see, I don't want to flash that. I don't want to just like flash my rosette.
You have a data slate containing the mission that you were given, your identifier and so on.
I see. So he basically mentions the data slate, mentions his code name, which you might have been provided as his contact, and he says it very casually. He said, "So I came to this world, and understanding that you're here to discuss whatever you're here to discuss, but I came to this world as a vagabond, and I've risen up through this society by my bootstraps. And all of you know that your contact's code name is vagabond, and he stresses that word very slightly. And I would like to understand your purpose for coming here, if you are also that type of person."
Awesome. The table you're sitting on is slightly elevated from the rest of the bar. There is a red lumen globe throwing this reddish neon tint on all of your faces. And you're barely visible to the rest of the bar. Just because it's so dark, it's so dim, this corner. And as you're sitting there, you see this man with a cybernetic leg of very poor quality step past you, and he almost like stumbles into your little booth, turns around, and he's got a deformed face, almost like burnt off. And he goes, "Excuse me." Sort of gets up and walks away.
Quentin kind of tilts his head as he watches a man walk away, and he tries to see if he can notice anything else about him that seems off.
He is wearing the same clothing that the royal guards were wearing, although this is sort of the clothing underneath, not the armor itself.
Quentin kind of clears his throat and turns to their contact, and he clears his throat. He goes, "And how do we know that your offer is genuine? I mean, you've been on here for quite a while. That can change a man."
The man kind of leans back in his seat, and he digs into his long coat for a second, and he pulls out a very fat glow stick. You might actually, as people of Earth, we would call it a cigar. And he cuts the end off, and he starts to light it. And he says, "There are many things in this life that I have been through and that I have tolerated. But do not ever question my devotion. Do you understand that?" And he looks very, not quite to the level of pissed, but you definitely offended him.
Quentin kind of sees the offense but doesn't give a shit, and just shrugs, and he goes, "You see, I come from a place where every man's devotion can be tested. So you'll have to pardon me if I don't jump just because you say how high. What I will say is, I'll let you give us the information for now, and we'll see how much we trust that information. But before that gentleman that knocked by, is he just a random person, or is he someone we gotta be worried about?"
That's a good question. The man finishes lighting his glow stick, and he says, "On Aventine, the first thing that you should know is that everyone you see is potentially controlled by the opposition. Do not ever assume that anyone outside of our circle is friendly."
At that, Quentin kind of turns to Ross, and he kind of
Shit.
spends a moment tapping his fingers on the table and goes, "Well, little kitty cat, why don't you go sniffing off and follow that little stranger? Maybe he's gonna go somewhere interesting."
Well, that's been too much tension for me anyway. Rose just slides down the table and walking away. So I'll go do that, yeah. and she like nervously walk away.
Quentin kind of smirks as she walks away, and he's just like, "I like that one. She's small, can get into nice little places. I think she's lucky, in a kind of dumb, bizarre way." And then he shakes his head and he turns back to the contact. "Anyway, you gonna share the information or not?"
Anyway, well, first, let's prove who we are, right? And so the man reaches down into his scarf, which has a very tight knot on it, and he very slightly pulls out his inquisitorial rosette, which you notice immediately is not a rosette of the Ordo Hereticus. His rosette is from the Ordo Xenos.
At that, Quentin kind of clears his throat, and finally he kind of seems to take everything a little bit more seriously, straightens a little bit in his chair, and you see him kind of cast his hands to his sides, and as he does that, you just see the rosette pip from his sleeve and then slip out back underneath. And he kind of nods his head to Sister Electra to do the same.
Yeah, she'll sort of withdraw her own rosette from her within the sort of not necessarily hidden pockets, but like the inside of her cloak.
The man inclines his chin very politely to both of you. You get the sense that he spent a long time on this world and in this society, and he has spent a lot of time among the nobles, and so politeness and courtesy is something that he espouses even when he's just, meeting regular people. And he finally introduces himself. He says, "My name is Carlos Laganwe, and I've been here for about 2 years. I've been a deep cover agent in a cell, and about 5 or 6 months ago, the rest of my cell went dark. So the last instruction that I got was that you all would be coming. I have information on some keys, I understand, something like that you're searching for, but I don't have a lot of information on it. However, I do have information on a contact, as well as maps and the ability to get us down there, of another member of our cell who may have more information." But he raises his hand when he says that. He says, "Keep in mind, the way that my previous cell operated was we never met each other. We talked through dead drops. We spoke over encrypted communications." So, and he shrugs a little bit. He almost looks exasperated, and he says, "So, I only know the man's code name, if he's even a man. And to be honest, after the rest of my team went dark, well, I haven't had really any communication. I've left dead drops to him, and I've never gotten a reply. So what we may find when we get there is, I really have no idea."
Well, consider this an open invitation to maybe join a bit more of a exciting life with us and see what these keys are gonna do. And my name, by the way, is he almost spends a split second thinking about it, which maybe gives away that it might not be his real name, as he kind of extends his hand. Hugh Jackman.
"A pleasure to meet you, Hugh." And Carlos reaches across the table and clasps your hand. He has a very strong grip, actually, surprisingly so, because the man doesn't actually look that big. And he leans back in his chair and he says, "So, Hugh, I was actually hoping you guys could tell me a little bit more about your mission and what we're looking for. Like I said, I've been here for a couple of years. I may have more information just based on my interaction."
Well, you see, I'm a man of action, so I'll let the sister here explain much more delicately our mission. And he kind of just claps his hands and gestures over to Sister Electra to explain.
She sort of looks at him with her hair dyed, and obviously she's trying to hide the fact that she's a sister. She's just gives him a look like, "Really, dude?" Before turning back to their contact and says, "Well, I'm not even sure if we should be talking about it this openly in public. Despite it being a private booth, I get the feeling that on a world such as this, the walls tend to have ears."
"That's true enough." Carlos nods his head and says, "This is what you might call a den of inequity, though. We are okay to talk about some things. What I would say is that if you like a more private area where we can discuss detailed matters, my apartment is not that far from here. I can get us in there. What I will say is that I don't have a place for you all to stay yet. So we can go do that, or we can go find a place that you and your team can hole up for the night and get you somewhere to rest."
Quentin kind of raises his finger up at that, and he goes, "Before we do anything, I need you to understand one thing. I don't think you're gonna come out of this maintaining this cover. And if you take us with you anywhere, there's gonna be questions. So are you ready to lose everything in the name of the Emperor?
So Carlos laughs a little bit and says, actually, my position in the city is one of the few that allows me to meet foreigners. In fact, my cover background allows it quite a bit as well. So as long as it is short-term meetings, there's probably no problem with that. However, you won't be, for instance, crashing at my place. But to answer your question more directly, and he pauses for a second, and he looks down at the table, and he thinks about, it looks like he thinks about what he's saying very carefully, and then he finally looks back up at Hugh, and says, I am ready to do whatever is asked of me or required. My instructions were clear, and so if my time here has ended, then my time here has ended. And he just kind of shrugs and leaves it at that.
Well, if you say so, I ain't gonna question anymore. Why don't we go to your place? I prefer to keep wherever we're gonna end up staying separate. You know, just in case someone should chop off any fingers or toes to find out any more.
Understood. Do you want to fetch your comrade?
Well, I guess this is probably a good point, GM, to see what Ross was getting up to, following that guy.
Ross.
Yes, I'm here.
Alright. So you got up. You sort of disappear into the smoke of this bar. Just flashing lights appearing through the smoke as you see her silhouette disappearing away from the rest of them. Ross, as you're following this guy, he nervously looks over his shoulder. And you see he's grabbing something on his belt. And he starts to walk sort of unevenly, faster and faster to the opposite side of the bar.
Claim received.
Well, I probably just follow him unless he looks so clumsy that I can steal whatever he's trying to hold on to. Probably not. Probably there is not such a dense crowd that he would not notice it, right?
He turns the corner behind a booth on the opposite side of the bar. What do you do? So he disappears behind the corner.
Alright. So I try to catch with him.
Okay. As you run around the corner, as soon as you turn the corner, you look around and you see something beneath you. It is just the smoke is so thick that it's hard to see it. But there is a gun pointing to your abdominal area.
In a bar.
Yeah.
With a lot of people.
This is behind the booth. No one can see this. It has a silencer on it. And he's pointing it at your chest. He says, I'm an ex-yeoman. You're fucking with the wrong guy. Trust me. He's shaking.
Wait, you're a veteran?
The yeomanry? He just looks at you like questioning, like you're supposed to know what it is.
I look at him questioningly like he's supposed to answer what's that. I'm sorry, man. I don't know. Well, yeah.
Look, I lost both my legs to a wild animal. You think I'm afraid of you? I know who you work for. He's got a crazed stare. One of his eyes is silvery, just pale. Obviously gone.
Sorry, I didn't want to hurt you. I mean, I saw that you're old and also limping. I thought maybe you need some help.
He sort of squints for a moment. Wait, who are you?
Well, I'm a tourist, and yeah, you don't like tourists, right? I heard that.
Yeah, do a deceit test.
Right?
You get a +10.
Don't fuck it up. Oh, I fucked it up. Maybe I'll reroll.
Okay, give me some inspiration. Let's get on to use your fate.
Okay. I not.
Ooh.
Whew. Okay. He does not shoot you.
That's great. I have like a flowery t-shirt on me and also a big ass camera, and that's absolutely not touristy thing to do.
Awesome. He holsters the gun. He goes, oh. Sorry, we don't get a lot of those around here. Have a seat.
Oh, right. Can you like put the gun away?
Yeah, he's holstered the gun.
Okay, great.
And he sort of sits down opposite of you and he goes, yeah, so what brings you to Aventine?
Well, my captain was having vacations or something, probably looking for business, but I am having a general vacations, and well, this planet is not what I was expecting from it.
Your boss is probably nuts. Aventine is a place you send people to die.
Oh,
Just letting you know. He takes a sip of the... I would say.
so I guess my boss don't think too high of me.
I don't think he likes you very much. He nods and lights Lost.
Well, that's not a nice way to be informed of that. So, and why are you
Yeah,
here?
well, this is not a nice planet. Have you seen any of the wildlife here?
Oh yes, I actually crashed onto one of those on my way here. I was lucky, so it was okay. My car has some dents though.
He looks very nervous as soon as you say that. He sort of pauses himself. Wait.
Yeah.
Large man-sized spider, 4 long limbs, small body, no visible eyes, jaws surrounded by tentacles.
I don't know, man. I was really scared. I was basically screaming on my way there.
Those things swallow people whole. What were you doing out there?
Oh, I was traversing to the city.
The city?
Oh yeah, you can't land here.
Oh, so you were in... Wait, you drove here?
Well, I'm a tourist, so you think what I did?
You need to be more careful. Takes
Yeah.
another sip. You sit there for a while. Do you want to try to extract some information from the guy?
Yep, probably. Like, whatever. What is his organization that he's from, for example? What's the deal?
Yeah. So this is like out of narrative time. We're just going through this long conversation that you're sitting there with. He basically used to work for the Yomare. Yeah, you learned that the Yomare is Lord Sarawak's personal guard. That is what they're called. Those are the people you saw on the plaza doing the parade.
Alright.
And he, in combat with one of these lethal animals on Aventine, he lost both of his legs, and they were replaced with cybernetics. So right now he spends his time researching these animals, and he's somewhat of an expert on it.
Oh, that's an interesting hobby.
He talks a lot about something called the Humanes Nocturna, which is it's just a mythical creature that is said to live in the wasteland, and it can regenerate most wounds and even limbs. He thinks it has something to do with the warp. These are warp creatures, and he thinks it's associated with the sacred cull being ignored on the planet. So you sort of get some info on that.
Alright, that was very useful. Rose probably will try to stay in contact with this man because she always wanted to have some friends, and also she will try to buy him the nicest drink she can.
Yes.
I'm rolling for a drink. It was great.
Yes. You sort of befriend him more or less. Yeah.
At this point, in Kit's earpiece, because we still have those, don't we? You kind of hear Quentin's voice. Well, little kitty cat, you find any milk?
Who are you saying
What?
that to?
Kit. Because we have,
Oh,
had ear
yeah,
piercings,
you have
didn't we?
Yeah, that's right.
What? Are you leaving?
Well, we ain't gonna sit around here forever. Did you find anything or not?
Well, I've got something, so... Alright. Wait, I forgot how my new dude bro is called.
Molig Arler. I didn't say it.
Okay.
Molig.
Molig is his name.
Yes, Molig.
Okay. Alright, Molig, I need to go. My friends are leaving, so...
He tips his
have a great
captain.
time.
He goes, thanks for the chat. Talk to you later.
Yeah, nice meeting you. And I wave away.
Yes. You meet up in the bar? You're all together? Where do you go?
Quentin kind of. Oh, sorry. Go on.
No, go ahead, Quinn.
Quentin kind of just crosses his arms as Kit arrives, and his fingers are kind of drumming against his crossed arms as he's kind of waiting for her. And then he kind of frowns. Well, did you find anything, or were you just dithering about?
More of the second option. This guy was a biologist.
A biologist?
Yeah.
Well, sounds like it's a nothing burger. He turns back to the other guy and just kind of goes, lead the way.
Sorry.
Carlos breaks in for a second and says, just understand, depending on what type of biology he does, it could be pretty useful. Aventine is not a friendly world, but he gets up and starts to head out.
Okay, as we're heading out, I can say quickly he was in local biology of the Aventine. He had some personal grudge for the 4-legged spiders, and also was saying something about the
Hominus
mythical. Yeah.
Carlos laughs a little bit and says, that's just a myth.
Quentin kind of just frowns for a second, his brows kind of come together, and he's like, the hominis whatamus? This is too complicated, this talk for me. Sounds like it's useless. If you want to meet up with your boyfriend later, you can do that, but just don't tell him what we're up to. Can't trust anyone on this planet. And as he says that, by the way, he leans
Don't
over
worry,
to Ross
I
by
don't
the...
know what we're up to.
he leans over to Ross and kind of whispers in the ear, by the way, he thinks my name is Hugh Jackman. Keep the cover.
So Carlos leads them out of the bar and then across to his apartment building, which I don't know if you want to describe that.
As you step outside, you see the guard go.
Oh, look at him. He's all happy now.
He literally points to you, Mogadishu.
Look, one drink and he's all smiles.
Yes, you know I can't hold my liquor, Tetricus. Thank you.
That's right.
He nods intensely.
As Carlos passes, he claps Tetricus on the shoulder, like they're folks that have
He
known
goes
each
in
other
for a
long
hug,
time.
like a real bear hug.
Oh, he's a hugger. Yeah.
Yeah.
Carlos is not, but he'll do it.
Yeah, you sort of get squeezed under his strong metallic arms, and you did
Just
the breath
as
goes
this
out of
is-
your lungs.
As this is happening, Quentin's just crying, but clearly failing to hide his laughter, just going hee.
Tetricus, good to see you. I'll see you later.
Love you.
Gotta
I mean,
be-
I like you a lot, sir.
Ross
Thank
is generally moved by people being so nice to each other.
So, Carlos leads across the plaza, and his apartment is actually not particularly far away. In fact, it's really more on the edge of the plaza, kind of across the street. Nothing like the opulence of any of the other areas, but you can tell it's a very upscale apartment building. And he walks into the foyer, and the foyer is lined with like granite and marble, and it's all local. In fact, there are even like some plants and things like that. And at this hour, the lights are dimmed, and the doorman both seem to know Carlos, and he greets both of them. Not quite the way that he greeted Tetricus. He greeted that man as a good friend, but he takes them back and just as he gets to the elevator, he tells the elevator, Quintus. He says, "Quintus, taking some friends up to my apartment. We'll be back in an hour." And the man makes a little bit of note with a quill, and Carlos brings you into the elevator and hits the button for the top floor, and the elevator slowly, grinds its way upwards. It seems like since this planet is effectively withdrawn from Imperial control, things have gotten a little more, a little less well repaired, and so the elevator slowly draws its way up and makes itself to the top of the apartment. And you notice when the doors open that this is actually the only apartment on the floor. So Carlos steps up to a security door and inputs a security code into the pad, and then scans his hand, and the doors open, and there's this very nicely appointed, opulent almost apartment. You step in, and there's a few couches. It's obviously a place that's made for entertaining as much as resting. But one thing that all of you would notice is it looks like it's almost completely unused. Like, there's no dust, there's no anything like that, but it doesn't look like anything really is ever out of place here.
Quentin kind of walks in and he just lets out like a low whistle as he kind of examines the room. And he takes in everything. He always comes off as a bit brutish and frank, but when you see him prowl across the room, you can see the investigator in him, the Adeptus Arbite, as he kind of is looking at everything, but touching nothing. And he finally comes to stop by the windows and turns back around and he goes, Well, someone has been working very, very hard. I can see why you're so high up on the food chain.
Carlos actually laughs at that and says, "Actually, I'm only a minor advisor in my position here, but these people have a taste, although they may not show it, for off-world investment. So, interestingly enough, I was recruited from a rogue trader fleet, and just the mere mention of rogue traders is enough to catapult you into the upper strata of the society, whether or not you've actually done anything to earn it." So he goes over and he pours a glass of some local Emisec. The vintage is not that good, but you find that under the opulence, he probably has a taste for things that are not quite as nice as his surroundings, and he hands you each a glass.
You can hear a distant buzzing of a voxcaster laying in the corner of the room, which almost like military commands being shouted out. And you forgot to turn it off last time you went out. So it's sort of just this faint noises. Other than that, it is completely quiet. The room is perfectly sealed. Outside the window you can see the occasional light moving as you see vehicles driving in the distance. You can see this tall spires piercing the clouds above. And just looking down, you can see this smog cover the plaza, the giant plaza beneath you, and the palace to the right. And in the room itself, you can take a drink, you can walk over and try to listen to this voxcaster. You can there's a little shower, a toilet, you can refresh yourselves. Lots of interesting things. So you guys are free to do what you want.
Quentin takes the most expensive looking booze he can find, pours himself a glass. And also at the kind of explanation that Carlos gave, kind of hums and just snorts a little bit, and he just shakes his head and he's like, "I don't know how you can do it. Come from nothing and live like this." You see, where I came from, you couldn't take the grit out of you. Stuck. Not like it that way.
Hugh, I bet if you were here, you would be in the same place for like 3 days. Yeah, I believe in you, Dai. Ross is going to try to listen to the transmission, maybe make it a bit louder so it'd be easier.
As soon as you turn it up, you hear some commands. They're military commands, and they seem to be calling out some patrol surrounding the city. This is the radio that the yeomanry use, which is the elite city guards.
So nothing unusual, just regular city patrols. I turn
Yeah.
it back down.
So Carlos notices that you turn it up a little bit, and he perks up and says, "I monitor Vox transmissions from the yeomanry. I have tried to map out their patrol routes and understand exactly how their military command works. I don't have a lot of contacts in the military, but it's important for my work here, and I assume yours. But understand that device is not something that should be talked about."
Ross just looks like normal radio.
And Sister Electra, Tristan.
She's gonna try and find a shrine or something that she could pray to.
Is there a shrine in the apartment?
There is a shrine to Sanguinius in the room. Yeah, there's a very small shrine, and you can see that the shrine, unlike almost everything else, is actually very well tended. And there are actually there's an amulet of Sanguinius. There is a small incense burner. There's a few things like that. And then there's actually also on either side of the shrine, on one side, there is a set of military decorations, and they're actually given. These are the ones that you might wear in like dress uniforms, right? They're not ribbons. They're actually like medals. And that's on one side of the shrine, and then on the other side of the shrine, there's a series of pictures, and it just actually appears to be parts of Carlos's life, and there are some very very prominent ones, and actually the most prominent one that you see is a picture aboard what appears to be some type of imperial vessel or maybe a rogue trader vessel, and it is an entire flight squadron, and the squadron is arrayed in I don't know if you have any or Sister Electric has any military background, but they would be arrayed in kind of a funeral procession, and in the middle there is a casket which is draped with a flag that you probably haven't seen before unless you have some rogue trader experience. And there's a black stripe that goes from the upper left. It's a black ribbon, and it goes from the top to the left.
Very nice. All we get inspiration points, of course, for your awesome role playing. Anyone can take a Scholastic Lore Legend test. You notice there are sort of symbols on the walls that were here when you rented the apartment.
I don't have that.
If you don't have it, you can do a general intelligence test, -20.
-20. Quentin isn't the smartest tool in the shed anyway, but go for it.
Make it lucky. Oh God!
My god!
That's actually...
We'll see.
That's just a success, just about. Barely a success.
Quentin his brows come together as sternly as possible. His lips are slightly downturned as he just kind of stares at everything really intently. And there's just a little part of his brain, the smallest part, that's like, hang on, you may know just a little something about this.
Awesome. You don't know the specific story, but you've heard since all this talk about saints and all that shit. So you heard about Saint Wolfram Russ. Wolfram Russ. That is the local saint to Aventine. You don't know where you read it, but at some point back in the day, you open a book and you happen to read about the different planets in the system, and you read about Wolfram Russ. Wolfram Russ, all you know is that it's sort of an angelic character. He is worshipped as a saint in the city. You don't know for what reason or why, but you know that he is one of the saints, and his symbol is on some of the walls there. You can see it sort of carved into the wall.
Quentin kind of closes his throat as he takes a deep drink, and he shrugs and he goes, "Now, I may be wrong, but I believe these are symbols of Wolfram Russ, some sort of saint, one another. Whoever lived in here before you was quite the diligent prayer. I don't know." He kind of shrugs. He's already slurring his words a bit from the alcohol as he kind of decides to lounge down in a chair that he's done enough thinking for the day.
Nice.
So Carlos sits down, and after he hands each of you a glass of emisec, you see his exterior just kind of relax and decompress, and all of a sudden the man that was on the outside is different from the man that is on the inside, and he's much more relaxed and casual. In fact, he doesn't seem very proper at all. He takes his low stick, which he still hasn't finished smoking, and he said, "So, understanding that Mr. Jackman here and I have been introduced, I don't believe I caught the names of any of the rest of your teammates."
I'm Roswilda Fuchs, and about this about this Rose. What is it? It's like a tank?
Oh, you talking about Wolfram?
Yeah.
He's
Oh.
a saint.
Yeah, no. Oh, you're talking in dialogue? Sorry, yeah. Yeah, he's a saint.
Oh.
Local saint to the planet.
All right.
I didn't understand the thing. But you're talking in dialogue now? You weren't asking me a question? Or?
No.
Oh,
She just introduced herself and asked about the saint.
I gotcha. Misunderstood.
Yeah.
So Carlos looks a little chagrined, but he says, "Actually, I've not delved too deeply into the histories here. My time keeps me busy with other things, to be frank. If Hugh says it's a saint, then I believe him. I have no idea."
Quentin kind of not a single pause about being, and he just kind of nods and he goes, "I might be many things, but I'm a man of great memory." As he downs more of his drink.
And then Carlos turns to the very obvious, perhaps, Sister of Battle with the dyed hair and says, "And what is your name?"
Where's black? She dyed her white hair to try and hide it. But she sort of pauses and blinks for a second, remembering that everybody is going with fake names, but she hasn't really done this sort of thing. So she says, my name is Thomas Jefferson.
So Carlos laughs a little bit and says, so he looks down and he looks like he's trying to find a tactful way to say this, but he's smiling at the same time, and he says, "So I don't mean to impinge on your cover, Thomas, but you may." He clears his throat. He says, "But you may wish to select a name that you may wish to select a different name than that."
Quentin kind of just rolls his head back on the sofa that he sat on and looks over at Electra and just rolls his eyes and he goes, "You picked a man's name! You're a woman!"
She sort of turns to him and blinks and says, "Oh, sorry, I'm new at this sort of thing."
We all were once.
What is the feeling you would get as an outsider looking at Sister Electra?
I can give another description. If you like. Was that to me or is that
Tristan?
Yeah. Well, ordinarily she seems quite fine, but she's this whole skulking around and lying to your contacts thing. It's kind of a new experience for her.
Yeah.
So she seems a bit out of touch, but she's trying to maintain a calm and collected demeanor.
What does she look like? What's the first impression you get from looking at her? Like a dangerous soldier, harmless, worried?
She sort of looks like a pretty, yeah, like a sort of a dangerous soldier. I don't want to say, yeah, actually I would say kind of grizzled because she's been basically out on her own for like 5 days and has been traveling across the desert.
True. Nice.
So she definitely does look kind of grimy. She's wearing carapace armor and
you're wearing your armor.
has a gray cloak. Yeah, I've been wearing the armor.
Okay, so you're this massive, hulking, armored, soldier-looking woman, whereas the others are dressed in more civil clothes. Nice.
At this, by the way, Quentin kind of just looks over, still looking over Electra, and is like, "Why don't you just tell him your real name like the rest of us have?" And he resists the urge to wink very, very hard.
I'm not sure, Inspector Reynolds. That might not be a good idea.
Hugh Jackman, we've only just met and you're already forgetting my name. You see, you just can't get the staff these days. He says as he kind of just waves his hands over at that guest Carlos.
Carlos laughs a little bit and says, "It's all right. I don't think anybody here is going to give their real name in a bar." So with that, he starts undoing his boots and taking them off and just relaxing. He completely like man spreads on the couch and lays his head back, and he says, "So I want you to understand." And then he starts undoing his scarf. And when he pulls his scarf down, you can see why he wears it, because he has a rope burn that goes all the way across his neck, and it looks like someone tried to hang him. And he says, "My real name is Jericho, and I've been a member of the Ordos Xenos for something like 7-8 years now. I was recruited from a rogue trader fleet after we were attacked by Xenos pirates, and I've been stationed here for the last 2 years. This place is dangerous." He turns and he looks at each of you in turn and he says, "The problem with Aventine is not what you do see, but what you don't see. He pauses for a second and looks at each of you in turn and he says, "I commend all of you for coming in with a cover, but I think here we can probably speak freely. So my first order is to basically give you any aid that you require. Now, there's some things that I'll have a hard time acquiring, but I'll do my best to put you in contact with anyone that I know, and I'll do my best to help you find whatever you're looking for." He shrugs a little bit and he says, "But I don't know anything about Ordo Heretica's business, so you'll have to help me with that."
As a quick reminder, no, I can send you a message. No worries. Go on.
Quentin kind of pauses for a moment and takes a deep breath. Pulls out a glow stick from his jacket and lights it. And he lets Carlos say his piece. Or Jericho now, rather. And he spends a moment just rolling it between his teeth before he lets out a shrug. My real name is Quentin Harlock. And I guess I don't come from the nicest place either. Just like you, this ain't all our first mission, but we try and do the good word of the Inquisition wherever we can. But like I said, the way we're gonna take you, it's probably not gonna end nice. It never really does.
Jericho nods at that, and then he says, if you... Well, he pauses, and then he looks off for a moment, and then he says, well, I haven't received orders from my Inquisitor, with the exception of to aid you in the last 6 months since my cell went dark. And then he looks at each of you in turn again, and he says, I want to make sure you understand what I'm saying. Previously, we operated on this planet because there's a large interest in this sector in some of what's going on. Some of these planets disappear into the warp and they come back. They've got new Xenos species, they've got new Xenos technology sometimes. Aventine for the moment is maybe safe, but I don't know. However, I have a very strong suspicion that there's something else here with us, and that's probably what killed my team.
Quentin lets out a breath and he's like, if you knew the things that we've all seen, you know that we ain't scared of Xenos, no matter how it appears, no matter who protects them. We will kill them, seek them out, and destroy all of them in the name of the Emperor. And for the first time, he actually seems serious about something. And he bites down on his low stick hard as he remembers all those times he nearly died, as well as the times where the Inquisitor himself nearly killed him. And with that, he just lets out a deep breath of smoke and just shrugs. We are all at the mercy of our mission. So don't you worry about whether we're willing to sacrifice. Just worry about what the next step is. The keys. We need to know.
So Jericho nods at that and says, I don't have any information about the keys other than the fact that you're looking for them. I understand it's probably not one artifact, but maybe several. What I do know is I was instructed to take you to meet a former member, or maybe still a member of my cell, I'm not sure. His codename is Mordecai. And he is a Adeptus Mechanicus hacker, I suppose would be the best way to say it. He's someone that has a lot of influence, but unlike me, my position is meant to be public. I was supposed to be the public face of my team. He's somebody that works more in the shadows. So I have a map to his location, but I don't know how to get in contact with him. He's currently located in the sewers beneath the city.
You all get 10 inspiration points.
10? Nice. That Quentin kind of glances over his team and lets out a little scoff, and he's like, great! Another 10 men.
Oh, come on. Are you not interested in hacking? That sounds great. It's like we could achieve so many things without blowing up everything, and you know.
There are only 5 things I'm interested in.
And
Booze, women, shotguns, the Inquisitor, and our mission.
and everything can be blown up, you know?
Electra kind of clears her throat and makes the sign of the Aquila.
Anyway, Quentin kind of scratches his hair and he goes, fine. We'll go and meet this friend of yours when he's alive, even if we are going to the sewers. But before that, we need to base the operation. Clearly this cannot be it. Do you have any suggestions?
I do, but first I'd actually ask a couple questions, if you don't mind. The first being, what is your cover for being here? So I talked about how the city is a dangerous place, not for what you see, but what you don't see. So I have some suggestions, and it would be very easy for me in my position to have a connection with you. But he looks over at Electra specifically. He's like, it would require a little bit of finesse, maybe.
Quentin kind of looks over at Electra and goes, "What he's saying is that you look bleeding obvious."
I mean,
I would like to hear the suggestions.
she sort of blinks and is like, I don't understand what you mean.
Jericho laughs and he says, "So, understand my position. I'm a minor advisor to one of the noble houses. Specifically, my advisory position is about dealing with off-worlders, specifically world traders. My cover is that I work for a house out of the Coronis Expanse called House Chorda. They're a particularly bloodthirsty lot. However, they have a large amount of resources, and this planet is desperate for off-world contacts. Lord Sarawak has taken an interesting... he pauses for a second as though he's looking for the right word, but then he realizes like he's not outside anymore, and so he doesn't have to, bullshit people. And he says Lord Sarawak has taken an interesting interpretation to being in the Imperium. I can't remember, and neither can really anyone else, the last time a black ship stopped here. So things are not all right here, and they're looking for outside influence to bring in supplies, possibly men. I don't know. He looks around and says, if your cover is that you're rogue traders, then, or a rogue trader advance team, then I think it'd be pretty easy to get you into the city with no problem."
Quentin claps his hands and goes, "Well, that sounds like a good reason as any. But we should dictate our positions within this rogue trader pretty quickly." He clicks his fingers. "Now, maybe it's a bit presumptuous of me, or maybe it's completely correct, but I think I'm well suited to be the captain. Or at least someone of that sort of ranking." He kind of smirks to himself.
So Electra sort of clears her throat and says, well, the group of Inquisitors who I entered the planet with were already using that cover.
Quentin blinks and he goes, "Your point being?"
My point being, I am already here under the name of being a rogue trader. That's all I'm saying.
What is
It
your
would
rogue
not be
trader?
difficult.
What's your rogue trader fake ship name?
Jericho holds up his hand and says, wait. Let's take things a little more slowly, and let's talk about what you need to know as a rogue trader. He says the first thing you need is a house. Second thing you need is a ship. And then the third thing that you need is everybody's hierarchy. So, do you have a house?
It was a quite spur-of-the-moment decision. It was enough to explain why someone of my stature with as many guns as I have would be coming onto the planet.
Understood.
So that's an open question.
Quentin
Jericho
kind of,
nods.
Quentin kind of blinks at Electra and just his brows are coming together. "Are you saying that I'm gonna be your underling?"
I'm saying I'm already someone else's fake underling in a fake rogue trader fake ship. Yes.
Well, then you can be an attaché. You can be of assistance. Maybe we took you in a trade. Doesn't matter, that can be washed. Maybe I'm friends with your boss or whatever. That's fine. But like our good friend is saying here, we gotta establish some sort of order. So, maybe we're even two separate groups. Maybe you're here in attendance for your trader, and me and Kit Kat over here, we're in attendance for ours. Sounds fair enough. As for the house, he turns over to Carlos. I am not of that sort of forte, so why don't you tell me the most suitable class, or house, rather, for someone like me?
Jericho nods a few times and says, I would actually suggest a house named House Rykos. They operate several sectors away from here, but their reputation on the space lanes is that they are seeking to aggressively expand. Now, I choose House Rykos specifically because the likelihood of another House Rykos member even passing by this system in the next century is pretty low. I would steer away from houses like Winterscale, which has a lot of trade coming out of the Coronis Expanse, even as far as to here. The second thing that I would ask is your ship name, if you find House Rykos to be suitable to you.
Well, it sounds suitable enough. You know better than I do. Likelihood of someone coming past.
Sorry. Anyone who wants can do a common lore rogue trader test. If you have.
Nope.
Anyone who has.
Electra should have it, no?
No.
Oh, well, then you can skip that.
Do you want Jericho to roll that, Morgan?
If you have.
Yeah, I have it.
Go for it.
By the way, Kit Kat is now officially Ross's nickname from Quentin.
Yeah.
It was actually like from the character creation because I get cat skill.
You're skimming your mind for information about rogue traders, rogue trader houses. You know you've read something about the archives of the sanatorium, that there were some basically rogue houses that you've already put up as impossible to investigate. So the archives of the exact members of these rogue houses are unavailable, and they would be the perfect cover. But other rogue houses are also a good cover. But you don't seem to remember these other empty houses.
Cool.
So you guys are still sitting in the apartment. Anything else you want to do before you leave the place?
We need to decide on a name for the ship.
Also, I want to ask about the radio station. Can we have make a portable version of it, or is it super advanced so you can just copy the addresses?
This is connected to what's it called, a data loom, or like the a rather large station that you cannot take with you.
Okay, but that's not like a regular radio that's just picking up frequency and decoding it.
No.
Okay.
No, this is quite advanced and expensive equipment.
Okay.
So Quentin kind of turns to the group. Any name suggestions?
Don't look at me, I'm always coming up with very stupid names.
He raises a brow over at Jericho and Electra.
Jericho looks and says, well, so my ship's name was the Gallant Expanse. Rogue trader ships are often named in such a way, something that sounds a little bombastic, perhaps. You might take something like the Intrepid Discovery, or maybe even, I don't know, something Imperial. A lot of rogue trader ships are refurbished Imperial ships.
Sis, you know any cool stories with cool names?
I'm sure he does.
Electra sort of turns to look at Quentin and says, I think I have one that might be up your alley.
Well, hit me with it.
How would you feel about the Lone Star?
He kind of hums on it a little bit and taps his chair and then looks over at Jericho. Would that be to your liking?
Jericho tips his head and nods and says, absolutely. The only thing that you really need is to say it with confidence and treat it like... He pauses for a second and he goes, imagine your ship is like the one safe refuge that you have, and it's the only thing that prevents you from dying. It's the same as a guardsman naming his rifle in a war zone. He says that's how you need to feel about your ship.
Quentin kind of takes a deep breath and nods slowly and he goes, don't worry about my acting. I may not look it, but I know how to play the part. He nods slowly. And then, in a blink of a moment, his voice completely changes. And he puts on a more noble tone and he goes, so how is it that someone from a house Oraiko may speak like this? And he extends his hands across with a smirk on his lips.
By the way, are you wearing your Adeptus Arbites uniform?
He always wears normal, because he's got clothing in his inventory, so he normally always wears normal clothes on top of that.
I picture like off-duty police officer with like the suspenders, t-shirt.
Oh yeah, and trench coat, and yep.
Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, he puts on the accent and asks, Jericho, if that's the sort of voice you should put on.
Jericho laughs a little bit and says, sure. I mean, rogue traders come from every imperial world that you can imagine, right? So, doesn't really matter so much what you sound like. It's just, it's more an attitude, right?
Well, good, because I quite like talking like I talk. Quentin lets out a little laugh. And he claps his hands together. Well, we got a ship name, we got positions. Well, actually, he points over at Ross. He goes, you haven't decided your post yet.
Wait, and Sis have decided her post again?
Sorry,
Sister
what?
Electra?
Well, Electra is already attached to a rogue trader, so we're gonna pretend she's an attachee to us, but you haven't got a post.
Oh, I don't know what people do on starships.
How about you be my personal assistant?
Like, go after you or like type stuff?
No. Jericho, he waves his hand and he says, you need something much more impressive, right? How about, and he thinks for a second and he says, how about executive officer, something like that?
Quentin kind of waves his hands over at Kit and he goes, you really think she needs a post that's more impressive?
Oh, I definitely can't do this type of post, but I don't know, maybe I'll be entertainment manager. I don't know.
Entertainment? I told you she should just be my personal assistant. Trust me on this. With this girl, you just don't overcomplicate it.
Ship morale officer. Understand, everything in the Navy sounds like it's way more impressive than it really is.
Alright, ship morale officer. She keeps me laughing, I guess. Quentin just rolls his eyes and he goes,
If there are concerns about perhaps me seeming too much like what I am, we could just simply wave it off as me being the ship chaplain.
Jericho nods a few times and says, absolutely. Either the ship's chaplain or the master at arms.
Well, I guess a very pious master of arms would make sense too. She, for those, oh yeah, I forgot to describe, she has a lot of scars all over her face from like all across her right cheek is like familiar marks of a scatter gun blast that narrowly missed.
Nice.
Along with blade marks across like the bridge of her nose and her forehead. So she definitely does look a lot more like the military type than the priestly type.
Awesome.
Quentin kind of just interlocks his fingers together and he goes, well, I guess the last thing is, do we need aliases or are we okay going around our normal names?
Jericho shakes his head and says, I would never give your normal name here. Understand that everybody is potentially under opposition control. So I will take to calling you Hugh if that's what you want.
Quentin kind of thinks for a moment and goes, Hugh Jackman? Kind of name of a captain. There's also Bob Dylan. He kind of just tilts his head between the two and he goes, let's stick with Hugh. And he nods. He goes, you two, come up with a name for yourselves.
Electra sort of looks to Roz, sort of like going to follow their lead.
Ross looks at the ground, then looks at the Quinton.
Jericho just looks at everybody.
Quentin's just kind of like, brows come together and he's just like, come on, don't spit something out unless you really want me to call you Kit Kat.
Well, Officer Kit Kat would sound horrible.
It's not the worst name I've ever heard.
You know, I once met a girl in a place of disrepute, but she had quite a nice name. It was Angelica, with a K. He kind of flicks his finger up. He goes, never mind what she could do with her body. I think it would fit a nice name for you. You're very angel-like and morale-based.
I think you just called me a hooker, but I call it as a compliment.
And then he turns to the sister. And you?
If you give me the name of a woman from some pleasure house, I will gut you like a fish here where you stand.
He paused for a moment and he goes, well then come up with your own name. I told you the thing.
I'm not good at this sort of thing. Would Whoopi Goldberg seem too distasteful?
Oh god.
I don't think I
This is
could
going
call
in the wrong
you
direction.
Master at Arms Whoopi.
I felt that would be wrong.
Jericho pauses and says, you know, I used to fly with a girl, and she was a hotshot pilot, actually. He looks over at Electra and he says, her name was Dominica, and her call sign was the Dominator.
I see.
I bet she dominated.
She sort of shoots Quentin a harsh look, and she says, I suppose that would work. That seems more authentic than anything I could come up with.
Well, I call this meeting adieu, if you don't mind. Let us focus now on finding ourselves a place.
Jericho nods and then reaches over underneath the coffee table that we're all sitting around, and he pulls out a data slate and he opens it, and what you can see is it's a map of the city, and it looks like it's been personally mapped by him. So there are large places that haven't been filled out. There's places that have question marks on it, things like that. And he kind of scrolls the data slate over to the west side of the city, and he points at a few city blocks. And he says, over on the western side of the city, which is fairly far away from the palace, there is a series of... he pauses and he says, well, in other places you might call them slums, but, you know, this is the palace city of Lord Sarwalk, so they're not as bad as some places that I've seen, but you can get a place very cheap, and a lot of these buildings, and he points to one particular hab block, said a lot of these buildings you might be able to get an entire floor or at least several rooms, and in this particular hab block it butts up against, and he scrolls the map a little bit, and he points towards an intersection of roads, and in that intersection there's like a small traffic circle. He says if you are able to get something on this corner, he said it'll provide you good sight lines for sniper fire and good sight lines for some kind of observation post in this hab block. It's not the greatest lodging, but said it's cheap, and pretty sure something like that will be available.
Yes. The apartments that you're pointing to, they have view of the plaza. It's just very far away. They're quite tall, so in the top floors you can see the plaza. So you still have a good view. It's just once you step out of the building, you're not really that safe.
Quentin shrugs and he goes, I've been in places that no human being would ever want to be in. I'm sure we can handle this lodging. He kind of stands up and brushes down his clothes. He goes, I think this is the perfect place to call ourselves a break and rejuvenate ourselves. So how about we leave it here and we'll head off and find ourselves this new den of ours. Sound like a deal?
Jericho also stands and nods, and he takes a moment and says, let us synchronize our comm bead frequencies, just in case you need to call me. You may be a little bit too far out of range on the edge of the city, but if you get closer, you might be able to reach him. Also, he gives you the location of a dead drop that's not too terribly far away from the hab blocks that he mentioned. And what it is there's
take a moment to explain what a dead drop is.
Sure. So what a dead drop is basically if you need to send like a physical message, undercover cells will set up locations that get checked every few days, and it's usually something that is very easily hidden, and you leave the message in there. It can be, it's usually a very small hollow or something like that. You can leave the message there. It could be probably about the size of a data slate, and then it gets checked in a couple of days. So if you need to get in touch with him or leave some kind of physical evidence somewhere, he's already secured this area. And what he describes is at the edge of the plaza, kind of facing off towards one of the buildings where it's very difficult to see. He has kind of broken a little bit one of the statues, and inside the statue it's fairly hollow, and he describes it as it's a statue of a fish, and it's got a man, and he is stabbing at the fish with a trident, and at the base the fish's part of the fish's tail is able to be removed very carefully, and then it's strung back on with wire so that you can get the dead drop back on.
Well, how diligent of you to find such a imaginative way to hide the dead drop. We'll keep an eye on it, and we'll do our best to keep our heads down till we re-meet. How about you come to us, considering that we're your guests?
Jericho nods again and says, yeah, for the future, that would probably be better. I will go to the Senate tomorrow, and I will tell them about your arrival. And so we'll establish an official reason for us to be meeting. So that shouldn't be too much of a problem in the future.
Quentin gives another nod and then he turns to the group. Well, group, let's begin on our newest adventure.
Sister Electra. Tristan, what do you do?
Yes.
How do you respond?
She'll just sort of nod and go along with following the other's lead.
Okay. Ross?
I probably should ask some stupid questions like, should we make one more fake identity because this hotel don't look like a good place for real rock traders?
So Jericho, he kind of shrugs at that and says, if you'd like, I will spend some time creating fake identification documents, but understand that rogue traders staying in... He purses his lips a little bit and he says, unsavory places isn't all that uncommon, especially if you're an advanced party and you're far outside of the rogue trader space and you're a small house. Said, so I wouldn't worry about that too much, but for walking around the city, it might be good to have additional identification as well.
We'll leave that to you then, Mr. Connections. Quentin kind of smokes at that, and are we leaving it here, GM?
You leave the apartment, and the last thing you see, Mogadishu, are you staying behind?
Unless they need me to go with them, then Jericho will stay behind you.
So you open this large imitation wood door, makes a little creaking sound. There's an advanced panel next to it, probably some facial recognition. You open it, enter the dimly lit hallway with some flickering lumen globes, and you walk through the corridor. You look behind you and you see... What was your cover name again?
Carlos.
Carlos. Standing there in the door, or you actually know his real name now. And he slowly closes the door. Do you want to say anything, a last thing to them before they leave? Or do you just wave and let them leave?
No, I
What
mean,
did
he...
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
He doesn't really say much. You know, he just he walks them. He would actually walk them out because he's got to walk them past security.
Right.
So he would Carlos would take them downstairs and then sign back in with the door attendant to make sure that they get out of the building okay.
Yeah, he takes some notes as you leave, noting your identity so you can enter the next time without having to have Mogadishu's character with you. So as you enter the streets, you see that the sun is about to go down. It is quite dark. There is dimly lit streets, and you look to the left and you see these huge towering, ill-kept buildings stretching up to the skies. And as you're walking to this slum area, we can cut there.
Whee! Sorry again, everyone, for being a bit late. Hopefully I made up for it.
It was great.
That was great.